What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the A24 Archive. This is the segment on my channel where I go back through A24's entire catalog from the first film they release all the way until whenever I get caught up. And if you saw recently, I finally hit 60 movies in this journey of watching A24's entire catalog, and I did a video ranking the first 60 movies, which was a very interesting experience. And so now we're moving onward to the 61st film. And this is a movie that I'd heard of before because of the actors involved in the movie, but because of a lot of the initial reviews and the negative feedback that this received, I never really jumped on it and watched it immediately. And we've fallen to this spot where it's time to watch it, and as soon as the credits rolled, the DirecTV logo popped up after the A24 logo, which if you guys have heard me talk about it before in this series, when the DirecTV logo shows up, you're normally in for some garbage. There have been a couple of exceptions, but normally when A24 pairs up with DirecTV to produce a movie, it's normally not very good. But because of the cast of this movie, I went in hoping for something that was going to be at least enjoyable, and the film I'm going to be discussing with you today is The Vanishing of Sidney Hall. The Vanishing of Sidney Hall is directed by Shawn Christensen. Over the course of 12 years and 3 stages of life, Sidney Hall falls in love, writes a book of a generation, and then disappears without a trace. So, as I said, I never really had interest in watching this movie because a lot of the negative feedback, but it does have a really stellar cast, and I was looking forward to checking it out now that I've fallen upon it for that reason. And this movie is not very good. Honestly, it was very disappointing. It's very shallow and vapid. It thinks that it's very hyper intelligent, but it's very cringeworthy, and in a lot of moments feels misogynistic in a way that's very uncomfortable. And I'm going to break it all down for you today in the review. So Sidney Hall is played by Logan Lerman, and as the plot description states, we get introduced to him in 3 different points of his life. The first point is when he's in high school. The film opens with one of the most cringeworthy monologues I've ever heard in a film. You just feel that the creator of this film was like, oh, this guy's going to be hyper intelligent and so much smarter than everyone that he's around, but it does not come across that way in the dialogue delivery. And the entire opening segment of the film is his relationship with Melody, played by Elle Fanning, who lives across the street, how he doesn't really feel right in school, his kind of broken relationship with his parents, and this certain circumstance with one of the bullies in the school that the two of them come together to complete this very specific task. Well, then you jump 10 years into the future, and Sidney is a popular author, and he's doing really well. His books have sold really great, and he's going through a divorce with his wife, and we don't know who his wife is at the early parts of the film, but at the same time he's having an affair with Margaret Qualley's character, who is his publisher's daughter, and we see kind of the struggles he's going through with this separation with his wife. He also is getting a lot of pushback because the book that he wrote has caused people to commit violent acts or suicide, and so he's dealing with that internal struggle of the art he has created versus what it's doing to people on the outside. And then even further in the future, he is now vanished from the public eye. He's out with his dog, kind of going place to place, living on the road. No one really knows what's happened to him, and this random character played by Kyle Chandler is looking for him, and we don't know why he's looking for him or what he wants from him. And so the entire film is jumping between these 3 different timelines in a non-linear way. You're just getting bits and pieces from his life in random moments, and the film is just an examination of this one character's life. So as I said, I was not a fan of this movie. It's not the worst thing I've ever watched. There are some redeeming elements of the movie, but for the most part, it's really obnoxious, and it's very hard to stay invested because of how terrible most of the characters in this movie are. For starters, I will say for positives, the performances in this are pretty good despite the fact that the dialogue is not. I think Logan Lerman, playing this character over long periods of time, he does a really great job embodying the character in those moments in their life. And despite how some of his dialogue can come across as relatively cringeworthy, that's not necessarily his fault. That's the screenplay and the direction. But I do think that he does a really great job embodying the character over those different periods in his life. I think Elle Fanning is really solid solid here. Margaret Qualley, for the moments that she's in the movie, is really great. Most of the people in the film do a fine job with what direction that they are given. And there are some like charming, heartwarming moments and a couple of dramatic moments that I do think work well. But I really feel that the bad outweighs the good. Like I said, the very first line of dialogue in this movie is one of the most cringeworthy, awful monologues that I've ever heard, that involves like masturbation and like being that it's a high school student delivering this line and like referencing young girls, and it's like really gross, and it just doesn't feel right the way that it comes across. And then he has this dialogue with his teacher where he tries to paint his teacher as stupid, and then it's like, why does she even do this job? She can't understand literature. And there's a lot of comments made towards women in this movie from Sidney Hall's character that are hyper misogynistic in a way that's very uncomfortable. And it would be one thing if you have that misogyny delivered and that his character is going to go through some kind of change, but he never really does until the very like end of the movie, where he has this like epiphany of talking to this character. But throughout the course of the film, you're just kind of watching this person who's not really all that great, who's very self-involved and thinks they're smarter than everyone else. And like the relationship that he has with his parents is really weird. His dad is very quiet and to himself. His mom is like, you know, she had him when she was really young and she's trying to be a parent, but the two of them kind of butt heads nonstop. But they really seem to villainize her character. Like she has this one moment where she gets in a violent interaction with Sidney, but I don't know, I felt like all of their conflict felt really hokey and unnatural. Like they just needed something to cause these characters to butt heads so there could be some form of tension. I liked Elle Fanning's performance here, but I feel like her character is just like the young girl who the lead character can fawn over. And then like she delivers this line of, she's like, I'm really into Bob Dylan and horror movies and something else, and he's like, are you even a girl? It's like, oh my god, like just some of the cringiest dialogue that I've ever heard in a movie. And there's a couple of dramatic moments, I won't give it away unless in case you actually want to watch the movie, towards the third act, that are supposed to be like really heavily dramatic and that are the weight of the entire movie, that feel really like a Hallmark movie. Like just the framing and the performances and the delivery of the dialogue, it feels like a made for TV movie that like everyone was just kind of confused as to how to act in the scene, and it just makes you laugh a little bit. Like I found myself chuckling at these moments that are supposed to be really heavy and really intense emotionally, and instead they made me chuckle. And overall, I just found myself, this thing's about 2 hours long, and just throughout the entire 2 hour runtime, I kept getting pulled in and pushed out over and over again. And there would be things like that where I'm like, oh god, this is just absolutely terrible. And yeah, this isn't the worst film in A24's catalog by any means, but it's not worth watching either. There's not really enough redeeming qualities with this film that I feel like it's worth sitting down, especially with how hyper intelligent this character thinks that he is. It's just really hard to care about what's happening to him because of how obnoxious that he is. And it'd be one thing if his character went through any sort of shift, or like the characters around him are directly impacted in his life and they're like good people or something. But it's just kind of like, here's people, things happen, watch a movie. And I need a little bit more than that to enjoy it. And yeah, I would skip over this movie. It's definitely not worth watching. So have you seen The Vanishing of Sidney Hall? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Leave me a comment down below and let me know what you thought. I thought this movie was really bad. Outside of a couple of moments that I thought were enjoyable, I really wish I wouldn't have watched this. As always, if you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, helps me out a lot and lets me know the type of content you're looking for. I'm always putting out new material and look forward to getting more out for you in the near future. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching and have a great rest of your day.